With the release of the concept of the new RSI Scorpius, figured it would be a good idea to talk about something that's coming to Star Citizen finally, though it has been here in a way, I guess, but it's finally coming into its own, and that is the co-pilot and to an extent the multi-crew gameplay. With 3.14, we are seeing two things coming to the combat system that are going to dramatically change how things work. Now, before I continue on, let me say that what you are seeing here is just a couple of pictures I pulled off of the internet, specifically Google Images. And as I talk, these images should just continue to loop. However, these images do all pertain to what it is I wish to talk about. So, talking about the RSI Scorpius, since it's on screen at the moment, the big thing about it that people are talking about is that remote turret and the second pilot or the co-pilot, and how that is going to be controlled by that co-pilot. And I've heard a couple people talking about, well, what is the point of having a co-pilot, especially in something like Star Citizen, for smaller ships such as the RSI Scorpius and the Hornet. Or should I say the Super Hornet, since it's the only variant that has a co-pilot seat. Well, with 3.14 coming out, we are seeing capacitor gameplay as well as the missile operator modes coming in. Now, to my understanding, the first thing I want to talk about is the missile operator mode. And to my understanding, they are getting rid of the middle mouse button to lock and fire missiles and torpedoes. Also coming along with that is the ability to switch between which missiles you wish to fire. So if you are flying a Gladius, not a Gladius, a Gladiator, and you want to use missiles on something and not waste your torpedoes, you no longer have to, well, do so in order to fire missiles. You can switch between firing your torpedoes or firing missiles. In something like the Hornet and the Scorpius, however, that really only come with one size of missiles, you might be wondering, well, what's the point of even having a co-pilot in this missile operator mode? And that is, since you now have to switch between guns and missiles, that in the switching and the locking on time of whatever missiles and or torpedoes that you are firing, you have that bit of time where you're not shooting at anything, right? Well, in something like the Scorpius and the Hornet, your co-pilot should, from my understanding, be able to take control of the missiles themselves, leaving the pilot to continue operating the guns. Now, in certain ships, such as the Hornet, I don't see this being that viable. But we'll get to that in a minute. But for something like the Connie series, especially the Andromeda with its large missile complement, or even something like the Cutlass, where the co-pilot has a very distinct view that is not blocked by that of the pilot or any other member piloting or operating the ship, then they are in the sense a missile operator. So the pilot can fly around and shoot all the guns, and then the co-pilot or the missile operator, or as they a term I would like them to be called if they're going to be working as that, is the WISO, the Weapon System Officer, since that's what we use in today's terms, or at least the Air Force and I believe the Navy and Marines use it as well. This is the someone who their whole job is basically to operate the missiles. So as the pilot gets on target, hammers that target with uh, guns, bringing down the shields and maybe some of the hull as well, the co-pilot or the missile operator or the Wizzo, whatever you wish to call it, can lock onto a target, lock any number of missiles that they may need, switch between what missiles would be of a good use, and then fire, basically allowing all of your weapon systems to fire at the same time, very similar to what you can do in game right now. Um, with that, however, or should say, in addition, the co-pilot, weapon system officer, Wizzo, missile operator, whatever you wish to call it, can also, as I said, switch between the different missiles and payloads that you are using. This is something very important that pilots of, say, like an Arrow, which stock comes with two different versions of missiles, that's not something they're really going to spend a lot of time doing, right? A single seat craft trying to operate missiles, one, they have to switch to their missile operator mode before they can do anything. Second, they then have to select which missile they wish to use. This entire time, they are more than likely not maneuvering since they have to hold down the F key so that they can interact with the MFDs on their within their cockpit. And two, during this time, there's no shooting. So not only are you not destroying your enemy is actually in turn destroying you in the couple of seconds that you are messing with your MFDs. Of course, this can probably be changed. There may or may not be key binding so that you can easily swap which missiles and maybe cycle through them. And that would make this a bit easier. But I've heard rumors that CIG is looking to make the average engagement time of similar ships with similar skilled pilots about 2 minutes. That's what they are hoping for. And this is, believe it or not, a long time in the sense of an actual engagement, but also not that much time at this as well. Um, back during, or for reference, back during the Vietnam and the Korean War era, the average engagement, air-to-air engagement or a dogfight, was about 45 seconds. The longest ever recorded dogfight in history was 10 minutes. However, despite it being 10 minutes, the pilot was quoted with saying, and these aren't exact words, that it still didn't seem like that long of a time. And if you look into any documentary talking about that engagement, it is constant maneuvering. There is no idle time, there is no break. It is constant maneuvering, and that pilot trying to get out of there in one piece, which, spoiler, he does. So with CIG trying to make engagements last about 2 minutes, you have a bit longer than today's average engagements, and this is probably due to things like shields and balancing. But if you have two people of equal skill in, say, something like a Hornet, then not Hornet, sorry, an Arrow, a single-seater craft, or a basic Hornet, um, you will not have, or should I say, it wouldn't be a good idea to have even 5 to 10 seconds of flying straight and trying to change over which missiles you wish to use, because by the time you do so, whatever reason whatever reason you had to switch to those missiles, it's probably gone. In that entire time, the enemy that you are fighting, the other arrow of with a pilot of similar skill, is probably maneuvering to kill you and is going to get several good hits on you since you cannot really maneuver all that well. And in 5 to 10 seconds, your shields can be gone. They could have already locked and fired a missile, and now you're either destroyed or your shields and a bunch of your hull points are gone, and so on and so forth. However, something like uh, the aforementioned Cutlass, um, the Super Hornet to an extent, and other uh, pilot and co-pilot, so two-seater craft, even if going to what I was saying about the Super Hornet earlier, where the co-pilot can't really be a weapon system officer, where they also get to lock on and fire the missiles, and it would still be up to the pilot to do so. That is simply because they can't see. The the shot from the back seat, as you can kind of see here before the screen goes away, is that the co-pilot looks at the back of the head of the pilot. Um, they probably could still get lock-ons just by seeing the shapes and uh, reticle saying that there's an enemy here, or so on and so forth. They probably still could, but without being able to see things such as flares or chaff or anything, they might not be able to see uh, what exactly the enemy pilot is doing. However, what they can do is switch missiles for the pilot. With that, the other thing, talking about specifically the Hornet and the backseat pilot, is the upcoming capacitor gameplay. For those of you not in the loop, this is something that's also supposed to be coming with 3.14, I believe, where you can direct energy to certain systems within your ship. Now, the MFDs and the ability to move things around and power distribution are there. However, it does not currently work. A co-pilot in most multi-crewed ships, such as the Connie, or even the larger ships, or even as something as small as a Hornet, they will have access and can listen to their pilot who says, say they're in something like a Hornet, which isn't too maneuverable when compared to something like the Arrow. Sorry, Super Hornet compared to the Arrow. And he says, we need. He makes the call. The pilot makes the call because this guy's more maneuverable than us, and we have the hit points on it as well. Maybe we got some better shields. Why don't you put more power towards thrusters? Not only can we go faster, but we should also be able to turn better. The pilot does not have to take his eyes off of the fight to do so himself. The co-pilot can do it for him. And this is really, really important. Okay, and this is where, and kind of what I want to bring up with this particular video, is that I believe that these medium fighters, heavy fighters, and so on that have this pilot co-pilot dynamic are really going to start to shine when people start realizing this. Okay, single seat crafts such as the Arrow, the Mustang, the Hornet series, not the Super Hornet, got that right this time, are basically what they're going to have to do is kind of predict what kind of combat they're going to be in, what they're going up against, and set their parameters accordingly. So before the fight even begins, they should have which missile they want to use first, right? They should have their power distribution set to where they need, overclock their weapons if they need to, and so on and so forth. And they are kind of stuck in that position unless they get into some sort of position where they are granted a few seconds to change those. maybe able to fly behind an asteroid or something, which in the future should block um, energy signals and radars and whatnot, so the enemy player might lose them for a second. However, things like the Hornet and the RSI Scorpius and other two-seater craft can do so on the fly during the fight, allowing them to be much more adaptable. With that and the ability to shoot missiles as well as change which ones they need without losing maneuverability and any form of protection because your pilot is taking care of all of that. Not only are these two-seat craft going to be more reliable, versatile, and adaptable, they are going to win the fight, especially if it's a 1v1. My question, however, bringing this back to the Super Hornet is, I wonder if, so right now with the Super Hornet, if you do not have a co-pilot or your co-pilot is not utilizing it, the pilot has access to the turret on top. I am curious if, since the co-pilot of the Super Hornet cannot see through the pilot's head, if he'd be able to operate the missiles while utilizing the remote turret. I don't see how that would be necessarily a good thing. Right now, um, I have a friend who has been from time to time my turret gunner in my Gladiator as well as my Super Hornet. And I have to say that I feel as though you lose out on a lot of firepower if the pilot does not control the turret. Of course, there are times where it's useful. A guy gets on your six or behind you, and the pilot himself really can't do anything for a second or two. You know, the or he's shooting something else. Um, the co-pilot can take control and shoot behind him and keep him off your back, but you still lose out on a massive amount of firepower, I feel, if you are the pilot and you don't have access to that turret. But now, if they are able to switch between missiles and the turret guns while utilizing the remote turret, then not only does the pilot lose out on uh, the turret weapons, but so does the co-pilot. In the meantime, while they are locking on and firing missiles. So I'm really curious of how's that going to be. Now, one thing you guys may have noticed that I kind of want to bring up is that I have had the Polaris in here, and I'm going to address it alongside the Constellation because I want to talk about these in that of a more dedicated missile operator, or in the Polaris's case, a torpedo operator. And this is, if you look at the cockpit of a Constellation, you will notice that you have a pilot seat in the center and then two co-pilot seats. And so and I would assume it's going to be something very similar in the Polaris. So I think this is interesting because they not only have the pilot co-pilot dynamic where the pilot can operate the guns and tell the co-pilot what he needs in the way of like the capacitors and energy distribution, but furthermore, the co-pilot doesn't have to switch between operating missiles and doing the capacitor gameplay. That is then split up from the fact that they have two co-pilots. So you would actually have a pilot, a co-pilot, and a missile operator, very similar to having like a remote turret operator. So that is something I just kind of wanted to touch base on. I don't know how capacitor gameplay is going to work with ships such as the Gladiator, in the sense of they don't have a co-pilot, they have a turret gunner. I don't know if they would be able to lock on and utilize missiles or swap them out, or if in their turrets they can also utilize all the capacitor gameplay things and energy distribution. Because if you think about that, and if they are able to do that, then something like the constellations are going to be deadly. Being able to lock on, if turrets and remote turrets can lock on missiles, but even then, that means your co-pilot could also be a turret gunner if they can change the capacitor stuff and energy distribution. So that's just something I wanted to kind of put out there, guys. Um, so for quick recap, um, here very soon, once people kind of realize uh, and all of the bugs, if there are any, get fixed, that the pilot, co-pilot, or multi-crew ships are really going to start dominating when it comes to aerial combat. Um, and that ships that have typically more than two uh, slots are going to be even more effective in certain ways, for the fact that they can distribute more functions across more people, decreasing and or completely eliminating the lag between weapon systems being up and changing of the energy distribution and capacitors. That's all for the day. I want to apologize for how this video sounds and the boring, repetitive screenshots here. This is one of actually my first ever video really talking about something. It is currently 12:30 at night or 12:30 in the morning, depending on what you guys want, how you guys would throw that. And this is just something I literally just kind of saw a video and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to make a video talking about this. I will try to make something better with an actual like script and sound better and not be falling over my words so much. But that's just the problem I have. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This has been Jack Thren. I'll see you guys later.